Thank you very much, Lindsay. Good evening, everybody, to the December meeting of the Executive Scrutiny Board. Do we have apologies?
Chair, I have apologies from Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, Miles Patterson. Any more? If not, late items. Have got any late items? I haven't got any, but anybody else? Right, declarations of interest, item 3. So no declarations of interest from anybody. We'll move on to item 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of November. Can we take those as read and approved?
Move as printed, Chair.
Yep, fine.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 5, the forward plan. That's just to keep you updated. You've got that, I understand. If there's no issues anyone wants to raise about that particular forward plan, then we'll move on to Council Cabinet responses to scrutiny recommendations. They're also attached and you'll have had a chance to read them, hopefully. Okay, moving on to... Okay, great stuff. So we're moving on now to the Council Cabinet, item 7 on the agenda this evening. We've got the recommendations from the Executive Scrutiny, item 7. Items 8, recommendations from the Children and Young Persons Board. I don't think anybody's got any comments about item 6 or 7 on the Cabinet agenda.
Please.
Lucy, yeah, please come in.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. It's the CYP report. I thought that it was very interesting to read. It was used to be able to get such a short summary of what has obviously been a lot of useful work from them. I just wondered if there was any comment on the targeted support that was being talked about for the children without support in terms of the behaviour, because it seemed to be a behaviour issue that they needed to address, but Scrutiny wasn't picking that up as a particular issue. So I don't know if there's anybody here from CYP who can give us any feedback on that.
Do you have anybody from CYP? Kirsty, you're probably, with all due respect to you, the nearest that we've got, are you?
I'm certainly in the right directorate, but I've not been party to this at all, if I'm honest. Okay. I was expecting Andy Smith, but I think we might just have to take that away and get back to you, Lucy, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I just feel that there was a, there's obviously the clear recommendation to Cabinet there, but if there had been more information about how the education teams are engaging in that improved behaviour angle, that would have been useful, and if not, then I just think it's something that maybe Cabinet ought to be picking up on as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Lucy. I'm sure Kirsty will get someone to come back to you, Andy or one of his colleagues. Thank you. Moving on to item 9. You're now on for the main item, as far as you're concerned, Kirsty, updating the adult social care charging policy, I guess.
Yes, I can definitely talk about that one. So yes, you just have to forgive me if I'm looking at the screen, and because obviously there's quite a lot of appendices with this report. It's not as easy. We haven't got our nice printed pack that we used to have. But I'll talk you through it, even though I might not be able to give you all eye contact. So this paper, which is going obviously tomorrow for Cabinet, is about the current charging policy around adult social care. It's been in place for a number of years, but it is good practice to review that from time to time. And in relation to this revision, we have actually done some consultation on the changes being proposed. And so the 2 recommendations that are going to be going forward are about noting the content of the consultation and the equality impact assessment, and then adopting a revised policy from the new year, from the 1st of January. And just as a reminder, so the Care Act 2014, which is the statutory instrument governing adult social care, requires local authorities to set out clearly what the charges are for care, but we also need to publish a policy so that people can understand what they will be charged for. So there are a number of appendices in the report. One is about the actual consultation report itself, And we didn't have a great take up. We had probably less than 10% in terms of responses, although we did write out to, you know, pretty much everybody. But the Appendix 1 is a sort of statistical analysis around the consultation. Pen, do you want me to deal with the questions now or pick them up at the end? I just spotted there was a question on there.
Well, that's your fact, Kirsty. What I'll do, have we got any questions, please, from councillors for Kirsty with regard to this report? You've all had a chance to look at it in some detail over the recent days, so please fire away. We've got Lucy Kerr first of all, and then Steve Willoughby. Lucy, and then Stephen.
Is actually Steve first?
Oh, sorry. Okay, Stephen, Lucy, and then Fareed.
Oh, thank you. Okay. I'd like to just pick up then on that point that Kirsty just made, Chair, if I may, about, you know, I think you said there were 5,938 people that received adult social care overall. I think that's in one of your reports, but obviously only which I think that's according to Appendix 3, but you only had 49 people actually responded and gave their reviews. So it does seem that it's quite a positive view to the changes and stuff based on it, but it's not a very representative sample. So I just wondered, is there anything we can do to increase the sort of sample, the consultation, and do you really think it's sort of truly representative, I suppose?
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Kirsty?
Yes, I mean, the consultation ran for several weeks, and we did do reminders to people. If I'm honest, I would say it's probably because the subject matter is quite dry. So, you know, this is very much about updating the policy. That there's nothing that's in there that we were changing that would, I suppose, be particularly fundamental. So, if anything, I personally suspect that the low response rate was because it's not a subject matter that, well, for a start, people are particularly passionate about. And I suppose, you know, we don't charge. Some councils have the majority of the people that they provide care and support to who are paying, whereas actually there's a smaller proportion in Derby who are paying the full cost of their care. So it may well be that people didn't feel as, I suppose, invested in the questionnaires. But we wrote out to everybody, like I said. We did some follow-up. It was obviously available on our website. So I mean, I will definitely take ideas about how we can encourage people to get more involved. I just think generally these sorts of consultations don't attract much interest, sadly.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kirsty. It's trying to whip up some apathy with regard to it. Yeah. Stephen, right over to Lucy. Lucy, and then Fareed.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think we might have cut you off halfway through your presentation, Kirsty, but
that's okay.
I think the end result. I think the cover report presents the situation well. The appendices are obviously there as well to support it. So I think it's a nicely put together piece of work for us. But I did have two queries. And the first one is the beginning of the report, the main report, which is actually referenced as one of the changes. And it relates to the introduction where it says the adult social charging policy was last updated in July 2018. Now, we're updating it now, and obviously the cover page tells us that it's being updated now, and it's going to be reviewed 3 years on from January 21. But if you read that in isolation, it sounds as though this policy that we're currently reading was updated in July 18.
Oh, right, okay.
So I think it says was previously updated.
Yes, it's probably a vital word missing.
So it's just a subtle difference between last updated and previously updated.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was looked at 2-3 years ago, and this is a further revision. So no, that probably
so just some sort of clarity of that. And the other point is, again, it's a similar thing, and otherwise I think it's a nicely put together document. It just says 636.
Let me have a look. Are we in appendix? appendix.
This is the final appendix. This is the formal document itself.
Yes, the policy, the actual policy.
The policy, yeah. And
Yeah,
on
okay, I've got
636 ends up by saying Derby City Council will recover any reasonable costs incurred in protecting the movable property from the customer. Now, I read that separately from the rest of the paragraph because it was highlighted in yellow. And I was thinking, we're having to protect the movable property from the customer. Are they now in a care environment and we've lent them something and their wheelchair is going to bump into their property? So I think it actually means Derby City Council will recover from the customer any reasonable costs incurred in protecting the movable property.
Yes. What did you say it was 6.36? 6.6.
636. 636, page 11.
It's page 11. Derby City Council will recover any reasonable costs incurred in protecting the movable property from the customer. Yeah, okay.
What would you think would be better then, Lucy?
Will recover from the customer any reasonable costs incurred in protecting the movable property.
Doesn't it infer that? Yeah, but in fairness, Lucy, doesn't it infer that? Because it starts off saying when a customer is being cared.
Yeah. Martin, you're right. If you read the whole thing, it's there. But I read the last phrase separately. So we're protecting the movable property from the customer. Yeah. The customer is attacking the movable property.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, I mean, what I should have probably explained is that the yellow is highlighting the change, obviously, from the previous wording.
And that's what I read. I
concentrated on those. Doesn't it? It does. But yeah, we're certainly not protecting the movable property. I see what you mean. Yeah.
But apart from that, I thought it was a well-written document led through. I don't know if we still have a plain English panel or something, but it doesn't need a plain English panel to go through it.
Oh, thank you very much.
I would expect nothing less from Kirsty McMillan. Well done. Do to the top of the class, Kirsty. Right, okay, moving on to Fareed. Fareed.
Yeah, I've got a quick question just in case I missed something. I did went through the policy document as well as the appendices, but I couldn't really see any specified charges or the amount that they were changing by. Was that not included in this document, or is it something?
Yeah, there's something else. So this document, being the policy document, is very much about the principles, and then usually in February each year we bring a separate report to Cabinet which is about the charges that we will charge for people using any services we provide, but also how much we will pay as a fee. So we keep them separate because this is very much the principles, but in February you will get sight of a report which will propose what the actual charges and fees will be for the coming financial year.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I've not missed it, because that's what I was looking for.
No, you're early.
What changes are going to take place or have taken place that you're going to consult on.
Yeah, no, you're 2 months ahead of yourself, Fareed.
That's fair enough.
As ever, he's always ahead of himself, Fareed. Always thinking ahead, aren't you, Fareed? That's brilliant. Thank you, Kirsty. Right. If there's nothing else on item 9, we move on to item 10, Derby Adult Learning Strategic Plan. Is that you again, Kirsty, or is somebody else doing that?
That's me, Anna Mims.
Oh, sorry, who's that?
I'm Anna Mims. I'm the head of service for Derby Adult Learning. Hello.
Yeah, great, Anna. Great to see you. Okay, thanks. If you want to take us through it, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I was told to make the assumption that the papers had been issued and the forward plan essentially introduces Derby Adult Learning Strategic Plan, and I suppose to show off a little bit, what we're trying to do here is really integrate the strategic plan into the wider recovery agenda. So everything we're going to do now is about health and wellness, employability, recruitment pipelines, making sure that we really make access to our communities into relevant adult learning that will help with health, wellness and employability. So I suppose that the forward plan simply introduces that. Now, there was a very good service before we started to do this. Don't get me wrong, it was very good, and it is a good Ofsted inspected service. That's excellent. but we really are looking to extend the service so that it helps the overstretched services across Derby City Council. We work with schools now. We're doing an awful lot with parents. Our employability team now works directly with the Employment Hub, and indeed the Employment Hub is coming into our area so that we can make sure that our communities have really good access to supported recruitment pipelines into our own employment opportunities. So I think that's the report that I'm introducing. I haven't got a lot of experience introducing these sorts of things in this way, so forgive me if there are any other things that you would like me to say that I haven't.
Thank you very much, Anna.
I think, sorry, I'm so sorry, and forgive my inexperience at these meetings. I think it's worth noting that the appendices, I noticed Kirsty said this so much better than me in her way of doing things. There are two appendices to the report. The first one is, I think, the Ofsted inspection framework, and the second one is the ESFA funded methodology. So it sort of links it in to the expectations of both the funder and the quality management processes.
Thanks, Anna. Okie dokie. Lucy, would you like to ask Anna a question or make a point?
I would like to comment, indeed. And I love your ambition, because I think you're right that we need to be looking at how we work together and how we can be presenting a sort of coherent working view, and which makes it easier for people who are wanting to access services, as well as being more efficient in the delivery of them. But there are a couple of things that I just wondered whether you had also explored, because there is also training elements that go on within Derby Homes and Cycle Derby, and I don't know whether those are going to be included because they weren't specifically mentioned in the report. And then I wanted to say something about other areas as well as the employability that you might want to be picking up on as well. So do you want to start with that first point about Cycle Derby and Derby Homes?
Absolutely. The report, in order to be palatable in length, didn't include nearly anything. We just touched the surface a little bit of the various different projects that we're working with. So we're working very closely with Elton Willis. We're starting to develop the dialogue now with Derby Homes. We're working with Move More Derby. And also we're linking into third sector organisations. I think it's worth mentioning to this meeting that we made an application in the first few weeks of lockdown, of the first lockdown.
Anna, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if it's because are you moving around, or I don't know if you've got a headphone or not.
Because my family is downstairs, and I wouldn't inflict that on this meeting, so I'm slightly away from the Wi-Fi. I don't know what else I can do.
Anna, could I suggest you turn your video off perhaps, and then your audio might come across a bit better?
I can.
Thank you, Alex.
Certainly. Bear with me. Okay, can you hear me better now, councillors?
That's better. That's better. Thank you.
So we're also looking for additional funds. So I managed to obtain £298,000 of Ministry of Housing and Communities funding to support ESOL integration. And we're working with third sector community organisations to deliver that, which was a way of supporting our creative industries in the most difficult, most challenging time. I don't need to tell you this stuff, you know it all, but it just meant that we can have that broader influence on organisations' bottom line, whilst also making sure that we have that reach, Councillor Clare, that you're talking about. So we add value to every aspect of our community, and we don't duplicate and we don't compete. So absolutely, and you guys are on the ground. So what we really want to do more of is have that influence from the ground, so that we can be responsive to the needs of our communities. And you know those things better than I do. So you know where I am, and we can be very responsive to the needs of your communities if we know what it is they need.
Lucy, do you want to come back in again?
I just want to continue my other point, which actually Anna's introduced brilliantly, because I was going to ask about the two areas where I think that they could be adding value, which is firstly on the climate change agenda, and the council is seeking to make Derby a zero carbon city. So it's not just work within the city council, but across all communities. And one of the key areas that work needs to be done on is in home energy, and making sure that people's homes are energy efficient. And this is an area where there needs to be education before people can realise that they need to do something, which will cut their fuel bills in future. So that is one strand. And the second strand is in terms of transport behaviour change. And again, there is some money available for transport behaviour change, but people don't realise they ought to be thinking about how they travel until they've considered the education elements of that. So those are the two areas where I just wondered if you could be working more closely with other colleagues in other departments, because we do have people doing behaviour change within highways and transport, and we should be doing more in terms of the home energy stuff. So it was really whether or not there's an opportunity there for you to explore.
Thank you. And if you could see my video picture, you'd hear me sort of clapping and cheering this, because this is exactly what we want to be doing. There is nothing at all stopping us other than the intel, if you like, which now I have, fantastic, to actually create ESFA funded community-based programs. So now, Councillor Clare, you say, sort of there is an initiative on transport. How do we get our communities to understand that better? What do we do? Well, we can create that small, bite-sized learning chunks, if you like, funded by our community strand of our ESFA funding, to actually embed some of that new learning, that new understanding, that new awareness into our communities. And we can do that online at the moment as well. So we're constantly developing new programs to be responsive to the needs of our communities. And the wonderful thing about our funding is I don't think it's been as understood as it needed to be over the years. And I think this means that we can make a real difference quite quickly by interpreting our funding in a very positive way. So yes is the answer, the short answer. Let's do that.
If Anna, if you need to have any more guidance as to who best to talk to, if you haven't got those contacts yet, then maybe get in touch with me later on.
That would be super. Thank you very much.
So please do. Thanks so much, Martin.
Right, okie dokie. Let me just get my video back on. Right, okay, that's smashing. If there's no more comments on item 10, we'll move on to item 11, approval of council tax support scheme. Is Simon with us? Yes, Simon, are you going to take us through this, please?
Thank you. So this is a report that is brought annually. This report does not recommend any changes to the council tax support scheme. Just to give some context for members, this is where people of working age have to contribute 30% of the council tax if they are in receipt of various income or benefit thresholds. People of retirement get full council tax support. The 30% has been in place in this council for a number of years. There are in the policy a series of other criteria, such as about capital and other items that we take into account. And just maybe to give a bit of context, the number of claimants in December 2019 from both working age and people of retirement age was 17,262. Currently it's 17,402. But that probably masks that before the pandemic we were seeing a reduction in the council tax support claimants. And indeed, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've had about 809 new applications. And in reality, we do think that with the sort of end of furlough, more people on universal credit who may be eating up some of their capital may mean that the demand on this service or the demand for council tax support will increase. And that will obviously impact on our financial position, as we'll be able to collect less council tax. So that's a bit of the context here, but the recommendation is that the amount remains as is, and indeed if we were to have changed it, we'd have had to go out and consult about 4 or 5 months ago in respect of that. So That's the context of this report.
Thank you, Simon. Stephen, you've got a question.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm just interested in that last comment, actually, Simon, because you particularly mentioned that at 6.1. So even though you didn't change it, why was it not beneficial to at least maybe consult with the public over the fact that you weren't going to change it? Because wouldn't you like to get some views maybe from the public that, you know, of sort of potential changes that there could be, or any sort of comments that they might have on it at all?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Willoughby. There's not a formal requirement to go out and consult every year. It was not our view, especially in the context in the first bit of the year, when the uptake of council tax support was going down, that we had to consult. But there is the requirement that we have to, in a sense, publish our scheme each year. So I think a mixture of, at the beginning of the year, it wasn't felt we needed a consultation to revise the scheme, and then probably the impact of COVID, meaning that we really did not have the capacity to consult on any changes, means that this is brought to you to fulfil your requirement to agree your local council tax reduction scheme by the 11th of March next year. But we might want to consider, with the increasing demand in the city, a public consultation for a scheme that would operate from 22-23.
Thank you, Simon. Okie dokie. If there's no more questions, thank you for that. We'll move on to item 12, approval of a single discretionary award policy. I guess it's you again, Simon.
It is. Thank you, Chair. This is a single discretionary award, which I think members are hopefully aware that it includes discretionary housing payment that could be paid up to 6 months, council tax hardship, local area assistance such as white goods, utility payments for utilities, and this is supporting those people who are most in need. And if people wish to apply for that, they also tap into our welfare reform section, which allows quite a few people to benefit from access to wider trusts and other payments. This report is primarily just to make sure that the referencing is consistent across the changes that may have happened in the past year, changes in descriptions of other benefits, changes in some of the thresholds, but primarily is to report that in 2020-21 we got given 2.1 million of money from the government in respect to council tax hardship, which was often described as a £150 credit to all those who met the criteria of being in receipt of council tax support. That meant over 10,000 people were not paying any council tax this year. Sorry, the lights were just going off, which is why I'm waving my hand. This is again just saying there's no fundamental changes, but this is more asking you to adopt the updates of the scheme description and the scheme policy to reflect current situation. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks so much. Stephen and then Lucy.
So I just had to turn my sing-ons again, Chair. Right, so paragraph 4.7, where I think you're summarising the changes made to the policy and stuff. You've got a thing on an internal administration change, and you refer to the resilience of the policy is now referenced differently, alluding to Brexit and universal credit migration. So if I look in the actual policy and appendix, it seems quite sort of the actual mention of it all seems quite vague reference to be, you know, it talks about a vague reference to be this being reviewed in the actual policy. So it says, you know, that it's just going to be reviewed. So I'm just wondering, what are the actual changes here that's due to sort of Brexit and universal credit migration, and why are they required here in this instance?
Well, the universal credit sort of migration is that the number of people on a housing benefit, which primarily this scheme was linked to previously, there is a migration of people of working age onto universal credit. So this is in a sense reflecting the current landscape as opposed to any fundamental change. I'm just trying to find the reference, Councillor Willoughby, to Brexit that you mentioned. Was that paragraph 4.7? Did you say?
Yes, they were together in paragraph 4.7. It was. It talks about an internal administration change, and it says this is in the paper, obviously, and then it goes into the actual. If you search for Brexit in the actual policy, it's sort of quite a vague reference to sort of Brexit and why you needed to do that change due to Brexit. So I was just interested what the actual change is, because it just says it needs to be reviewed rather than sort of giving any sort of actual change in the policy.
Yeah, to be honest, it's this is in respect of a line of the equality impact assessment record as opposed to hold on, sorry, I'm just searching here. I think it's mainly just to make sure that in our quality impact assessment, I think one of the criteria we look at is obviously protected groups, and it would appear here that when we're assessing it, we also looked at the potential change of any impact on Brexit. I can't really see the relevance of that, if I've got to be honest, Councillor Willoughby. So I wouldn't place too much reliance on that as a context that has shaped this particular policy. I'm happy to go away and ask for a more detailed question on that.
I think it would be useful, because it's, I'm just wondering why it's there when it's a sort of policy there, and if it's not something that's relevant, why it needs to be in. I think, yeah, you already answered universal credit, obviously the key thing with, and people who it's aimed at, original housing benefit, now obviously universal credit. But I just wondered where Brexit would be in the whole thing, really.
I will undertake to do a direct reply to Councillor Willoughby on that once I've asked the author of the report for some more detail.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Stephen. Lucy.
I'm afraid I'm not going to be as positive about this report as I have been about the previous ones, because I found the final policy on this a lot harder to read and take through. It feels that it's been a bit of an amalgamation that's been jammed together rather than rewritten in a way that's coherent. And partly that is due to the lack of, I think, paragraph numbers and a plethora of bullet points rather than a better structured document. So I presume this is going to go on our website, but I'm pleased it will presumably be reviewed again. And when we do that review, I think it's got scope to be made a lot more understandable. I just want to give sort of examples of some of the ways that I felt it doesn't work. That, for example, some points refer to the applicant and sometimes it refers to you. So it's not quite clear who it's being addressed to. There is a comment on page 6 about the food vouchers, which are going to be redeemable for cash, and then a little bit further down it says that none of the awards are in cash. Now, if a food voucher is redeemable for cash, it sounds to me like a very close to cash equivalent, and that it therefore seems ambiguous to me. On page 7, there is a long list of bullet points and sub-bullet points headed by applicants must, and it's not clear as to whether an applicant has to be able to tick all of those boxes or some of those boxes. And then you've got a few paragraphs at the bottom which you think, why aren't those also bullet points? So all the information may be there, and the people who need to use this document on a daily basis may find it covers what they need to know. But I don't think it's particularly friendly for somebody who's going online to try and understand what they may qualify for. Well, but it needs to be approved. But there we go. As a particular query, I really like the fact that this is seeking to be that safety net for people who who have help in lots of other ways as well. So we have that those paragraphs about its aim and to seek things like to seek external sources of funding for the purchase of white goods, basic furniture items, clear energy arrears, etc. But it's not really clear how that is coordinated, and I don't know whether there is any duplication with things like DALs that we've just heard about home energy advice that we've got with the CAB, with the debt advice from Derby Homes. So there's an opportunity to clarify that element of the work, I think, as well.
Okay.
But again, it depends who the audience is for the document.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for that. In respect of the laying out of it, I'll take on board Councillor Kerr's comment. This is a policy which this is minor amends to, and especially reflecting the numerous interventions the government now asks us to do in terms of supporting people in hardship. But I think I will take that fully on board for the next rewrite of this. I think in respect of welfare reform, and especially the local assistance scheme, I seem to remember in the last year, Bernard Fenton, the head of customer services, came to, I think it was corporate resources scrutiny, and talked about some of the benefits and some of the leverage that was made in respect of trust funds and everything else. And from memory, that was over £500,000 of access to external funds to support those in need. And again, I can ask him to send that to members of executive scrutiny just so you have a context of that. So, but thank you for your observation. Sometimes when you're revising a policy, you don't go back in and have a look. How would a reader
who doesn't know too much?
Yeah. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much, Simon.
Thank you. In terms of Stephen's recommendation, I would be more than happy to second that. I'm, like most people, extremely concerned about the uncertainty of Brexit, and I think that needs to be, as Stephen is suggesting, that we should not approve this policy until the internal administrative change related to Brexit has been clarified. Now, Alex, are you happy with that wording before I put that to the vote?
Chair.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's that wording's fine. So,
thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, I'll go to the vote then. Let me ask: is anybody not in favour of that recommendation? Okay, that seems to be passed. I'll have one more chance. Nobody seems to be against that recommendation. So that is passed, and we'll go forward to Cabinet for tomorrow evening. Thank you very much.
Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 13. Who's going to take us through this? Is it Rachel or is it Ian?
It's actually me to start off with, Councillor Repton.
Sorry, Mags. Sorry,
no,
Mags.
You're okay. Ian's joining me because hopefully we'll be able to address some any of the questions together. But just to introduce the report, this report relates to the Household Waste Recycling Centre at Rainsway, which is operated by HW Martin on behalf of the councils. The facility is provided for residents to dispose of the household waste. And the contractors are incentivised to maximise the recycling and the recovery, to recover as much value from that waste that's disposed of by residents. And I think the recommendations in this report are really around seeking to improve access for legitimate users, to tackle and prevent misuse and overuse of the facility, and to have improved management information. I think just as a reminder, we put the booking system in place to enable us to reopen the facility when we came out of the first lockdown, so that we could reopen the facility to manage the site safely for visitors and for staff who operate the site for us, and operate safely under COVID. Another key reason for doing it was to minimise the impact on our waste collection service that uses the same access road to the transfer station. So obviously the priority was to be able to do the household waste collections. And another reason for implementing the system was around managing the queuing and managing expectations and ensuring that people could access the site without causing traffic traffic queuing. So the recommendations that we put into Cabinet tomorrow are based on information that we now have available to us, that Cabinet are asked to approve the continued use of the booking system, to agree measures to restrict access to the facility to Derby and Derbyshire residents, so that we're not taking cross-boundary waste and disposing of that. To agree to a maximum number of visits per household to 12 per year, and from the other information in the report, that seems, that is a reasonable number, and to refuse access for people who misuse and fail to adhere to the site policies. And I think we've put a couple of examples in the report just as a little indication of why we're asking for Cabinet to support this, in terms of the percentage of no-shows because people have been block booking. We had one person book 27 times and failed to turn up on 24 occasions, so preventing genuine access for other people. So our most prolific users were people that booked 45 and 43 slots respectively. The vast majority of users, over 12,000 visitors, actually only booked to attend the facility once in the period. So we just want to try and use the information to manage the facility more effectively, make sure that we can have access to legitimate households to dispose of their own household waste. So that's the context of the report and the recommendations. So happy for myself or Ian to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Mag. I've got a number of people wishing to speak. I want to make a few comments, but I want to preface these first, Mags, because what I'm about to say will be hard-hitting, and it's certainly no intended slight on any officer whatsoever I have the greatest admiration and respect for. But the current Conservative administration cannot continue to hide behind the skirts of the officers forever. And on this, this comment's been made to me today that this administration's plans will lead to a rationing of Derby residents' efforts to recycle. And basically, these recommendations are rubbish. That's the comment that I've been asked to make this evening on this. So there are major concerns about this, that the administration, not officers, but because I understand the officers' role in this, but it's about time the actual administration actually answers for its own policies on this. And now, having got that off my chest, I'll take Lucy, Richard, Stephen and Paul. Lucy.
Thank you. And I feel this is an opportunity to look at a number of things about the way the site operates, but I'm not against the general direction that this report is going in. It's just that I think we need to look at the opportunity that a review is presenting, rather than to just do the minimum. So the first thing I think is an issue of fairness, that if we're going to set a limit, I think there needs to be an appeal process, so that there may be good reasons why somebody is needing more than 12 visits in a year, and I think that there needs to be an appeal process, so that if you want to do 12, it's not a deadline, there's a process for that. The second thing is something which has been mentioned to me a number of times, possibly as cycling champion, which is why you can't go with a cycle and trailer to the tip and to take stuff. And we now have cargo bikes that Cycle Derby has organised, and we've had funding for, which you could use to take quite a significant amount of material to the tip. And again, because you haven't got a number plate, you can't book into the system, you can't go. So I think if we're going to believe in active travel, then we need to work out how people utilising active travel can actually use the tip. And finally, if you are booking, and I've not tried booking and taking stuff, but I believe you need to know what car registration number you will be arriving in. So that if you're booking in advance, knowing that you're going to be hiring a car for the purpose of that visit, you may not know in advance whether it's a car club car or whether it's a rental car, what the registration number would be. And I think we need to be sure that people know what those, that they can, how those would be managed in those situations. So I don't know if you have answers to any of those, or whether they have been discounted or rejected in some other way, but if not, I've got recommendations to cover them.
Mags, do you want to come back individually, or do you want to come back after? Which is easiest for you, Mags?
No, I think it'd be helpful if we could come back individually, Councillor Repton, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it, Mags.
Yeah, I think I might need Ian's help in certainly responding to a couple of questions. I think with regard to the appeal process, I think that's a fair challenge in terms of where there might be some exceptions. So happy to explore that one in more detail. As for the trailer and the cycle, I think I need to refer my colleague Ian if he can help with that one.
I think it's a very busy site with lots of vehicle movements, and we've got to carefully consider the health and safety in the vehicle movements. So that's something we can certainly take up with the operators, Councillor. I can look into that one.
Okay, thanks very much for that.
And car clubs, and when you don't know the registration number, how does that work?
I think on that one, Councillor, the data that we've gathered so far, you'd be surprised how many people book a slot with the wrong registration number or their partner's registration number. So we have got systems in place where we can check that we have actually got legitimate bookings, and if they don't know the registration number or they've put it in wrongly, the site will be able to check that out and let them on.
Okay, right, thank you for that.
Okay, thanks very much. Now over to Richard. So, yeah, I've seen your note, Richard.
Yeah.
Let's hear what you have to say, and then we'll talk to Lucy. Okay, so fire away, Richard.
Bless you, thank you, Martin. Right, the general direction this is going in, I can accept what it actually says there. But at the same time, there are going to be rare occasions when somebody does actually go over that 12 limit. If you're renovating a house, if you're doing a garden, and these are going to be very rare occasions. Would it be at all possible if somebody was actually prepared to pay a nominal fee over those 12 amounts to basically just pay it? Then you're giving people the scope to actually go over it if they actually want to, but incentivizing them to stick to it. And we are accepting funds what somebody's actually prepared to part with. And I was going to bring an appeals process in, which Lucy's already brought in. It wouldn't take much to the software we've got can take payments, and it could actually be bolted onto the system.
Okay, Mags, over to you or Ian.
I think with reference to charging, Councillor, yes, it is possible, but we take a lot of work in the IT background, but nothing's impossible. So that's something we could certainly look at as an option.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Right, I'll leave you, Richard and Lucy, to exchange a few written notes in the conversation. If you want to come up with a recommendation between you, whilst I take other speakers. And I've got Stephen, Paul, Peg and Fareed. Stephen next.
Yeah, I'm just thank you, Chair. I'm just concerned about the whole process, because obviously I was aware of this. This was apparently happening before this cabinet paper was published, because it was rolled out in the media. And so what I'd be interested to know is why this was briefed to the media as something actually happening before it was been actually passed by cabinet, and more importantly reviewed by this scrutiny board. Because as it's become apparent from tonight that the three councillors that have so far spoken before me have all got comments, have all got suggested amendments to this actual situation, as it were. So I'm just wondering why that was briefed out as something that was already happening. It's more of a process issue, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just come in, Stephen, I think it puts Mags in a very difficult position, because again, this is the problem. We don't have the actual cabinet member, and we ought to ask for them to come along here, because they'll be responsible about whether information goes out or not officers. And that's where I say, when I preface my initial quite punchy comments at the beginning, and perhaps we ought to invite the cabinet member along to answer this, because it's not fair on Mags and Ian. But
Chairman, I can answer that question.
Okay, Mags, go on. Okay. Oh, sorry, Rachel.
Sorry,
Right, okay.
Sorry, Councillor Repton. Yes, Councillor Willoughby. So in terms of the changes at the recycling centre that was implemented as part of our COVID response. So was initially when we reopened the centre to take into account obviously COVID secure measures, we introduced these particular processes around the I-permit and the booking system, etc., to ensure they were COVID secure, and that was done under our emergency powers as part of the emergency. So this report is simply about cementing these changes into the longer term. So that's really this is slightly unusual. Obviously, in terms of a COVID emergency, we had to do things very quickly through our emergency powers to respond to those needs for COVID security, and then it's really learning the lessons from that and a cabinet decision on actually making that a permanent change to how we run that centre. That helps at all.
If I can just come back on that for you, Chair.
Clarification, Rachel. Stephen, yeah, I'll let you come back quickly. We've got other speakers as well.
Because it was sort of, I mean, it is different because you obviously didn't have the 12, the minimum of 12, the maximum of 12 bookings under the COVID scheme, and it has sort of come as different, and that was all still presented out in the media as if it was happening, surely.
No, I think the media. Sorry, Chair. So may I respond?
Mags, yeah, please come in.
Yeah. I think the media have picked that up, Councillor Willoughby, from the publication of the reports last week, has been one of the recommendations. Obviously, it's an open report, so the recommendations would have been available. So I think that's probably where the information was picked up.
Yeah. Okay. A reasonable explanation. Whether anybody helped and sort of pointed towards it, that could be a conspiracy theory, I suppose. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Paul Pegg, and then Fareed.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got concerns over this, as I really do have. I don't like the 12 booking system for one thing. So let's take into account you come the spring, all of a sudden you decide to clear your gardens out and everything else and get rid of your rubbish. You fill your car up once, and then you're going to probably need to fill it up again, but you can only book one appointment at a time. So what you're going to do with the rest of your rubbish while you're clearing everything out? And I know what goes off, and it does lead to fly tipping. It leads to fly tipping around the lanes, Markeaton Lane, and so on and so forth. So there is an increase in fly tipping. It's already been proven that has. My other concerns are, how are we going to meet, as a city and the council, meet our recycling targets when they are down by 3/4 at least on previous years through this system? We're nowhere near the recycling targets that we have got to hit. So how are we going to achieve that? That's what I'd like to know. And basically, this is just a cost-cutting exercise to save funds to a certain degree. COVID has been used to mask it. The site is a massive site. Why hasn't it been looked at to redevelop that site as has been promised previously? And I think that we need to seriously look at it before this is implemented. And I would recommend that it goes back. We look at the whole site and we look at redeveloping the complete site as it is. And the number of visits per year need to be gotten rid of, because it is not going to help with the fly tipping or anything else. That is a definite fact, that is, because if you're clearing out and you've got rubbish to get rid of, you might need to make 2 trips. If you're clearing an elderly person's house out or anything like that, after the death, sadly, you might want to get rid of stuff. And we don't help, and we're not helping ourselves as a council by simply, and people phone up to get rid of bulky waste, telling them to leave it out 3 or 4 weeks later than what they've booked it, and it's collected, and it's left on the front for 3 or 4 weeks. and it's not helping the situation at all. But with regards to the site, I think it needs to go back. It needs to be completely looked at again, and the site's so big, I believe it could be redeveloped to save all this booking system.
Thank you, Paul, on that. Fareed.
Chair, the system that is being brought in now will become permanent. It was understandable that certain restrictions had to be put in place to tackle the COVID prevalence in the city, and some restrictions were inevitable. But to make that system permanent, I think we need to consult the public on a wider basis. In particular, in my ward, I have come across a number of people who are saying once the restrictions have been lifted, they're storing up their rubbish because they don't find the booking system that easy to use. And I think they were hoping that once we return to normal service, the rubbish which they've been storing up, they'll be able to dispose of it, because, as I say, for various reasons, people found the booking system cumbersome and difficult to negotiate. And I think, obviously, there's been a significant drop in number of people who've been using the recycling facility, and that is part. I mean, I don't think, generally speaking, people have started to produce less rubbish for some reason. I think the amount of rubbish which people are producing is more or less the same as it was before. But obviously there is something happening. I don't think, I can only think of either it's being stored or people are fly tipping more often. And in areas where a lot of people in my ward, English is not their first language, and a lot of families have got no access to computers. So for a variety of reasons, there are some good elements to it. If we can find a way of deterring people who are not eligible to use our tipping facilities from out of town or builders using it, I'm in favor of restricting that. But I'm sure if we apply our minds, we can find other ways of introducing those restrictions. But previously, I have used the site, and I put stuff in my car and taken it up there. I've really found it quite easy. The workers who are there are helpful. I've not had to wait any more than 10-15 minutes. And I think if we make any system harder to use, obviously the number of users who are using it will decline. Is that the purpose? Is the purpose for us to create facilities for ordinary people to make sure that they know where to dispose of it and make it easier for them to use it? Or is the purpose to make it more difficult so people are doing something else with it instead of using it to the tip? I have got serious reservations about the system being permanently in place, and I'm going to vote against it.
Thank you, Fareed. Now, in terms of recommendations, there are a couple of possible recommendations here. There's one from Lucy, and there's also one from Richard. I don't know whether members have some reservations
Excuse me, Chair. Could I have the question answered? How are we going to meet our recycling targets with this implementation? Because I haven't heard any answers to that yet. How are we going to meet the recycling targets that the city has been set, please?
Good point, Paul. Mags or Ian or Rachel, who will come in on that, please? Can you answer Councillor Pegg's question directly?
I'll have a go, Councillor, if that's okay.
Ian?
Ian, yes, Ian Drury. The Council's recycling targets, which we've got, Councillor, are based on not just the civic community site or the Household Waste Recycling Centre, but also the curbside collections. So where we're still collecting the vast majority of our recyclable material from the curbside, whilst the Household Waste Recycling Centre will have an impact on the recycling percentages, it won't be that dramatic when we compare it to the curbside tonnages.
Is that okay, Paul, or do you want to come back in?
Well, yeah, I understand that, Ian, but you've got to increase now the tonnage by what is it? Nearly 3/4 that we've dropped down at or at least half of the figures of the tonnage at the recycling centre. So that has got to be increased dramatically to be able to get anywhere near the figures that we've either set ourselves or the government has set us. So somewhere along the line, something's got to happen and something's got to give if we are to meet those figures.
The site operators, councillor, have informed us that the reuse markets and materials for going for reuse have really suffered during COVID. They're only really now starting to open back up again. But it depends really on how much of the materials are coming in that we can recycle. So even though tonnages have dropped, if we're getting more percentage that's recyclable, that would actually be better at the site. The site would be better performing. It depends on the mix of materials, councillor.
Okay.
Chair, may I come back?
Yes, quickly, please, Lucy. Thank you.
I was wanting to pick up the two elements that people have raised, one being tipping and the other being accessibility for the site. And we're talking here about there being, small reduction in costs if this is implemented. And I think that the solution is to be able to look at whether there is a way that we can introduce other bring sites with sort of extended recycling bring sites in the city. Then they might not be for waste, but they might be for the elements that people should be recycling. And if we could do that, then it might solve some of the problems we just raised. So I've got another recommendation about that.
Well, in actual fact, wasn't it in the Conservative manifesto to introduce a second waste site in the city? I don't know what's happened to that promise. I seem to vaguely remember that, but that's perhaps another question for tomorrow night or another day. So, Lucy, do you want to get on? So, in terms of your first, do you want to go through your first recommendation, or do you want to pen your second? Lucy, you're on mute.
Chair, I've got 3 so far here, so it might be easier if I just read them out. If I can just request, Chair, that Councillor Kerr just checks her last one before I go to the one that she's just posted. Before I go to that, I'll go now to the previous 3. So the first one was to recommend to Council Cabinet to include an appeal process for the 12-visit limit.
Okay, are there any councillors that wish to comment on that before we go to the vote? Okay, are you quite happy with that? Is anybody who's not happy with that? Can you speak out, please? No, we'll take that as read. Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Number 2, to recommend to Council Cabinet to include cargo cycles and cycles with trailers to be able to bring materials to the site.
Okay, any comments or concerns from councillors before we go to the vote? I don't hear any comments or concerns, so we'll go to the vote. Can councillors please indicate if they do not support that recommendation? I don't hear anybody saying that they don't support the recommendation, so I'll take that as an affirmative approval of that recommendation. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Number 3, to recommend to Council Cabinet that before this new system goes live, the option be considered for residents to pay a nominal fee beyond 12 visits, thus giving scope for increased visits, but incentivising residents' attempt to stay to 12 visits.
Do I have any comments from councillors or concerns about that particular recommendation? Can you speak out now? If you do. If you don't, we'll go to the vote. Is anybody against that recommendation? Okay, I take that as affirmative. There's no one against that recommendation, then that recommendation is approved. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Kerr, you have number 4.
You're on a roll, Lucy. What's this one now?
So we recommend that Cabinet explore the creation of extended specialist recycling facilities in other parts of the city.
Right, okay. Any comments from councillors about that recommendation or concerns? Speak
Can I
out
make
now,
a
please.
comment? I go
Sure.
along with the recommendation, but then I would suggest that the current system is not actually introduced until the more recycling facilities are available in different parts of Derby.
Would you be happy for the amendment, for the recommendation to be amended to include that, Lucy?
I don't think it's going to be practical, because we need to have some savings from what we're doing at the moment to be able to invest in doing something else. Our budget's really tight.
Well, yeah, with all due respect, Lucy, that's up to the current administration, isn't it? You're not part of that.
I'm not, but I'm just being realistic. So I think we're asking something. If we did that, we would be asking something which they would immediately turn down.
Fareed, do you want to put a second recommendation to Lucy's then?
Yes, I'd like to put that as a recommendation, but then we can vote on it because there's a split here, and some people might want to go along with what's being proposed, and there might be one or two who are against it. So
okay. Well, look, Stephen, do you need Fareed to write this down on the conversation screen?
Chair, I think the best thing for me to do is to go with Councillor Kerr's recommendation first of all, and I'll just read that out then. So to recommend to Council Cabinet that it explores the creation of extended specialist recycling facilities in other parts of the city.
Okay. Any comments or concerns that councillors wish to raise about that before we go to the vote? If not, we'll move to the vote. Is anybody against that recommendation? If so, please speak out now.
I'd like my proposal to be considered, which is that these changes are not implemented until the facilities which Lucy has suggested are available widely in the city.
Hold on, Stephen. What we'll do, we'll vote on this, and then we'll take your recommendations separately, because Lucy wasn't prepared to amend it.
No, I agree with that approach. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
right.
absolutely
So
fine, Chair.
there's no one against Lucy's recommendation. Anybody against Lucy's recommendation? If not, I'll take that as affirmative that we're in support of that recommendation. Now moving on to you, Fareed, your recommendation. Stephen, can you take that verbally, or do you need...
I think we need that typing in here, please, Chair.
Can you type that in, please, Fareed?
Yeah.
We do have another one.
I'm not very good at typing. It's just that these changes are not implemented until those new facilities have been created.
Do you want to do that? If you spend a couple of minutes typing that, Fareed, I'll take Paul Pegg's second his recommendation. Paul Pegg has recommended that the development of the site is looked at before implementation. I think that's basically what you're saying, Fareed, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
No, Fareed wanted new local sites.
I thought Fareed could speak for himself. Fareed?
I'm just going broadly that these changes are not implemented, and then how that happens, whether we need to redevelop the existing site or whether we create more scattered facilities elsewhere in the city. I'm not too fussed about that.
Okay. Fareed, if you could pen it down and try and incorporate what Paul Pegg said as well, please. Because Paul's put there that recommends that the redevelopment of the site is looked at before implementation, and I think you want to put that.
I'll go along with that one, and I'll withdraw mine. I'll go along with Paul's.
So that is recommend that the redevelopment of the site is looked at. Can we put in that at?
Yeah, I'll go along
at before implementation, Stephen. Okay.
So, Chair, thank you very much, Chair. So, just to be clear, then, the recommendation to Council Cabinet is that the redevelopment of the site is looked at before implementation.
That's great. Okay, let's move to the vote. Anybody against that recommendation?
May I comment first, Chair?
Well, yes. Okay, I think you've all,
just because I think to look at to not just look at, but to do redevelopment of the site, there's no point in looking at it unless the changes are actually made.
Well, with all due respect, Lucy, that's your opinion. We have a recommendation from.
No, I understand what Lucy's saying, and yes, I'm quite happy for that, Lucy.
So, because looking at it, so do you mean just looked at before we make the changes, or the changes need to be made? Because the changes that would need to be made are likely to be quite costly and have to go into a capital forward plan. And we would be therefore delaying any of these changes for, I think, a minimum of 6 to 9 months. And I just don't think the cabinet would even think about that.
Well,
so I think it needs to be put in.
It's a question of what we think as the opposition is best for the recycling, not what the cabinet thinks. These are our recommendations to the cabinet, not to go along with what they might like.
I would like it to be phrased in a way that the cabinet would accept.
That.
Sometimes we have to be challenging, though, Lucy. It's part of our role, you know, when we scrutinise, with all due respect. But Paul, are you happy for your recommendation to go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Richard, so very quickly before we move to vote.
I just want to speak. I'm happy to back what Lucy's just put forward, because in principle, as it's worded, I do support. But if we're asking for things to be changed, that's not going to happen before this goes live next April. It's just not realistic. So if there's any suggestion of that, I am going to vote against it.
Okay. Right, well, we've got the recommendation by Paul Pegg, which incorporates what Fareed was saying. Can anybody, those that are against it, please indicate?
I'm voting against it.
Chair, can I just...
Who's aye? Can you give your name, please?
Richard here, I'll be voting against that.
Okay, Richard's against it. Well, any other councillor against it?
That's me as well, Councillor Testro.
Chair, can we allow Stephen to conduct the vote, please?
One at a time, please. Councillor Testro.
Chair.
Who's that?
It's Stephen here, Democratic Services Officer.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of discussion about this. Is the recommendation that's now being voted on to recommend to Council Cabinet the redevelopment of the site is looked at before implementation? Is that it as worded? Thank you.
That is what we're voting on.
So would you like me to go through Would you like me to go through the councillors now, members of the committee, and take the vote? Thank you. Councillor Kerr, please.
I'm going to reject that. Thank you.
Reject. Thank you. Councillor Hudson, please.
Yeah, I'll reject that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain, please.
Accept.
Accept. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
Accept.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Accept. Councillor Testro, please.
Reject.
Reject. Thank you, Councillor Testro. Councillor Willoughby, please.
I'll accept it, please.
You'll accept that. Thank you, Councillor Willoughby. And finally, yourself, Chair.
Accept.
You accept that. That's 4 accept and 3 reject.
So that's passed.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Fine. Thank you very much.
Chair.
I think that's the end of the session. It's been we've packed a lot into an hour and a quarter. So I hope you all have a good evening. Wrapping your presents. Make sure you wrap one for me, please.
We've still got another item.
We have. Yes, Chair.
What's the real?
We've got another item, Chair.
Oh dear. What a shame. Right. Okay. What's the last item then? Let's have a look. Item 14, yes, contract and financial procedure matters. Sorry about that. I should turn over, literally and metaphorically. Right, who's taking us through that?
I am Chair, and thank you for your permission to introduce this item. This is our standard compliance with contract and financial procedure rules. There's 3 decisions on here. One is a write-off of irrecoverable debts relating to Dunn Motor Traction Limited, formerly trading as Yourbus, which members will recall went into administration last year. The second is in respect of Section 106 contribution from South Derbyshire District Council for construction of a footpath around the perimeter of Sinfin. The reason it's come to you is that it's formally utilising a contribution from another council, and that is for construction of a footpath around the perimeter of Sinfin Moor Park. And then the third aspect is the winter support grant that the government announced about a month ago in respect of they awarded Derby 899,000 towards this, and the report details the allocations which are to be made from that grant and some of the volumes and outputs that we can achieve. That grant needs to be spent within this financial year. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon. We've got Lucy and, sorry, we've got Stephen first of all. Stephen and then Lucy. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, just a couple of questions. First of all, paragraph 413. So you talk about the famous debts of your bus crashing. I remember it was one of my local buses around where I live. But what is the nature of the debts that they have? I'd just be interested in a sort of, you know, what they are, what they're in debt to. Then 4.3 around the COVID winter grant scheme. So obviously I presume for all of this that we've received an amount from central government, I believe, I think, is that correct? So how does this all break down from that amount received? So just so as we can see how the amount come in and then how it's been allocated out amongst all of this breakdown. And then specifically in paragraph 432, it talks about providing school meals, free school meals during the Christmas and February school holidays. But what about, you know, the Easter holidays as well? Because, you know, are people still going to be hungry in the Easter holidays? And we have particularly with the motion at full council last week, we should surely be providing stuff in the Easter holiday, free school meals in the Easter holidays as well. And also even, I don't know if you can, because I guess it's in the next financial years, but what about obviously looking ahead to the May half term and the summer, because this won't be over then, and you know, there'll still be a need for free school meals. And then if you go into paragraph 4.3.7, it talks about delegating the distribution of free school meals element of the grant to the Strategic Director of People's Services. So how are we sure that that amount that's quoted there will meet the needs of all of the required people, particularly, you know, again, with the motion passed in full council last week? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for those questions, Councillor Willoughby. I'll try and deal with them in order. Your bus, the bus operators pay for, if you want to call it, access slots of arriving and leaving the bus station, and this related to outstanding debts in respect of those slots from your bus in general. So that's the breakdown of the debt. The breakdown of the 899,000 is detailed in Appendix 2 of this report, Councillor Willoughby. So that breaks it down into support for sort of free school meals, utilities, and other food support to our communities, not just those on free school meals. So the breakdown is on that. In my introduction, I talked about this being a specific grant that has to be spent by the 31st of March. This report purely focuses on the allocation of that grant, and Easter, unless I'm mistaken, does not fall in this financial year. And the last aspect, which is to recommend to approve to delegate distribution of free school meals element to the Strategic Director of People's Services. Obviously, we will be collecting the detail in respect of the number of free school meal claimants prior to the Christmas break and also prior to the half-term break. And this allows us to effectively flex that depending on the number of people who would be eligible for that. And again, the council, if the numbers were higher, we would have to top up this grant in line with the spirit of this sort of what's in this report. So hopefully I've answered the 4 questions there, Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you, Simon. I'll just make a point before I bring Lucy in. You see my recommendations that Cabinet implements in full the recently agreed decision, it was only a few weeks ago, to provide free school meals throughout the whole of 2021. It is not up to Cabinet to frustrate the will of the democratically elected council. It's just simply not acceptable. Lucy, over to you.
Sorry, Chair, I've just stated that this report is under our financial and contract procedure rules, is in respect of the allocation of this specific grant that is only applicable in this financial year, and report details the allocation of that grant. The recommendation that you have put in relates to a financial year that this report does not relate to, and the grant is very specific for this financial year.
Yeah, I understand that, Simon. I'm just laying down what the will of the council will be. That the will of the council will not be frustrated. So if there's clarification on that and there's a U-turn on that, then we welcome that. Lucy.
Thank you. Just to comment on that initial point, I think we'll have to have another report that comes to us in, say, early March or late February to deal with next year. So I think that's when we'll have that one.
Too late.
Okay. I've got 2 points. The first one relates to the cycle path, and I wondered if we had any more information about the details of it, particularly in terms of the width of the path. We have a really good cycle pedestrian route through the Millennium Wood Park between Heatherton and the Oaklands Avenue area of Stenson Road sort of direction, which is really well used, and it's got some sections that are 4 metres wide and some that are 3 metres wide, and 3 metres is barely wide enough when people are walking dogs around it as well. And we've gone through Darley Park, Chair, you'll know well, we've got a 3 metre wide path there, which is reportedly very well used by a lot of people. So I just want to be assured that this footpath is going to be a minimum of 3 metres wide.
Yeah, the one through the park's called Repton Way. Yeah, I know it very well. Simon. Simon, you muted, Simon.
Sorry, I obviously don't know the width of the path, but we can get that information and confirm that back to you, Councillor Kerr.
Right, well, in that case, I'll put a recommendation in that it should be a minimum of 3 metres. And the other thing that paths need is somewhere for people to stop and rest, particularly if we're going to encourage older members or very young members of our population to be using them, because they have tired legs more often when people are young and old. The second point I wanted to make is regarding the funding for meals for children on free school meals normally. I've got 2 questions here. In 4.3.2, first bullet point, it says to award grants to all schools in Derby to enable them to provide a meal to children eligible for free school meals, presumably, during the Christmas and February school holidays. This sounds as though school kitchens are going to be open. Because if we're giving the grants to schools to provide a meal, that is food with children needing to go into school to receive it. And is that really what we're intending? Or are we saying that we're going to provide vouchers to the value of £3 per day per child? That's the first question. The second question is the eligibility. All infant children currently receive free school meals, a school lunch for free, whatever their family's economic situation. And I just wondered whether these were going to all infant children or only to infant children whose families are with poor economic situation.
Okay, Simon, over to you, Simon. A couple of questions there from Lucy, please.
Thank you. Schools are the best conduit for the allocation of the free school meals. Inevitably, I think we will read this at probably 100%, if not very near to it, will discharge this through vouchers, but it's not being absolutely prescriptive, but I think it will be almost entirely vouchers. In terms of free school meals, we use the definition of the eligibility of free school meals, not the sort of right for all people in the infant stage to have a school meal, because so we're trying to meet the most food. I'm going to use food deprived, but that's not the right word. But the people who really need this support, and so it will be the definition of free school meals, not the free infant offer.
So, can I ask how we're going to identify which infant children would come into that category, as their parents or carers won't have applied for a free school meal because everybody gets them?
I can ask a colleague from People Services to give a clearer definition. There isn't one on the call tonight, but we can seek to get that prior to the Cabinet tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen, over to you.
Yeah, I'm just interested when you talk about that voucher, and you'll give him a voucher. So it says it'll be equivalent to £3 per day per child, and presumably that's what the value of the voucher will be. But if they have to go somewhere else for that meal, what would £3 really buy them a decent sort of meal, really? Because I know obviously in schools it
sufficient food.
They get a decent meal there. But if they have to go to another provider, and of course the likes of course, if people like the generous thing of my fellow councillor Ajit Atwal over that half-term week when he provided load of school meals for people. But if it's just going to go to other providers and things with their voucher, is £3 really enough, I suppose is the question.
Yeah. I think that's probably difficult for Simon to answer, but Simon, do you want to have a go?
Like the vouchers are intended primarily for them to be used in supermarkets, and I'm aware that many of our supermarket chains are already engaged with the use of a voucher scheme. So primarily it's for the supermarkets, so people can find there or in a sense access that through that route. If other voluntary or other places want to carry on their support of providing free school meals or food during the holidays, then they are at liberty to do so.
Thank you very much, Simon. Right, I'm going to take the recommendations. Now, the first recommendation, that's one that I made following on Stephen's very valuable contribution and concern about free school meals. Now, I accept completely Simon's comments about this report only covering to the end of March, but I think we could use the opportunity to get Cabinet tomorrow night, whether it accepts it as a recommendation or not, by putting it in to confirm that it will implement in full for the whole of 2021 that voucher scheme. So I will put that recommendation, please, to councillors. Please, if you can indicate if you'll support or not.
Chair, may I suggest a slight amendment to it? Say that
if it doesn't take away the force of it, then
no, it's to say that Cabinet now plan to agree in full or to deliver that Cabinet plan now to deliver in full.
I will accept if it is that Cabinet implement in full.
No, to plan now.
No, not to plan. It needs to. What is the other term that you use? I don't like. No, not plan. Because
to deliver?
Plans can be deliver,
no. They need to be planning now to deliver.
No, listen, it's up to me whether I accept or not, Lucy. I'll accept the amendment if it is that Cabinet delivers in full the Council's agreed decision to provide free school meals. I'll accept that.
My reason, Chair, for altering the wording is that
Lucy, look. Okay, please, you're trying my patience a little bit, but look, what I'll accept is the thing is. Lucy, please, I'm trying to help you. Let me just finish. That Cabinet plan and implement in full the Council's agreed decision to provide free school meals throughout the whole of 2021. I'll accept that, yes.
No, Chair, they can't do that without a budget associated with it. So it's at this stage they need to put it into their budget.
Lucy, again, I have to remind you that we're here to scrutinise. That it was agreed at full council that this is what happened. You seem to be giving them an escape route from that. This is the will of council, Lucy, that's what the council voted on.
Chair, I completely agree with you, but I haven't seen
I'm not prepared to accept your amendment. I'm putting it to the vote. As it is. Right, okay. If anyone wishes to vote against it, please indicate.
Chair, sorry, can we just ask Stephen to just clarify the wording that he has written down for the recommendation, please?
Yeah, go on. It's on the screen.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. To recommend to Council Cabinet that it implements in full the Council's agreed decision to provide free meals throughout the whole of 2021.
Thank you very much.
Free skills for eligible school children?
Lucy, I'm taking it to the vote now. We've had a discussion. Anybody against that vote, against that recommendation?
Chair, I can't support that wording as it stands.
Okay, that's all right. Anybody against that recommendation? If there's nobody else, then that is the recommendation passed.
Chair, can I suggest that Stephen conducts a roll call in the interests of...
Go on, Stephen. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'll just read through that once more. To recommend to Council Cabinet that it implements in full the Council's agreed decision to provide free meals throughout the whole of 2021. Councillor Kerr, please.
I won't support it because it doesn't refer to eligible school children who are receiving the free meals.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Hudson, please.
I'm not going to support that either because of the way it's worded. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain, please.
I'll accept the recommendation as it's printed on the screen.
Accept. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Councillor Paul Pegg, please.
I'll accept.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Accept. Councillor Testro, please.
Sorry, I can't support it. It's badly worded.
You reject that. Thank you, Councillor Testro. Councillor Willoughby, please.
I'll accept it, please.
You accept that, Councillor Willoughby. Thank you. And finally, yourself, Chair.
Councillor Epton, and I must say it's quite clear. All I'm asking to do is Cabinet to agree what Council to agree to implement what the Council's asked them to do unanimously. It's quite simple, quite straightforward, not confusing at all. But luckily it's been passed. Thank you very much. That's great. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. We've had an interesting 1.5 hours.
Chair, there's a second recommendation.
Chair, we have a second recommendation from Councillor Kerr. I'll read that out now, Chair. To recommend to Council Cabinet that the new path around St Finmore Park should be a minimum of 3 metres wide, and if funding allows, some seats are provided around the route.
Okay, so we've got the recommendation. I won't be asking for any amendments on that, Lucy. I'll be supporting that. It seems a sensible way forward. Any comments or concerns about that? If not, then we'll move to the vote. Is anybody against that?
Absolutely fine.
If nobody against, that's fine. That recommendation is passed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for attending. We've finally got 6:33, all the business done. If I don't see you before, have a good Christmas. Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Cheers. Merry Christmas. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Good Christmas. Bye.
Bye bye.